Humanity's ascent. In the year 2257, humanity stood on the cusp of a new era. After centuries of reaching for the stars, they had finally achieved the dream of faster-than-light travel. With this leap forward, Earth made first contact with the Galactic community, and soon after was invited to join the Galactic Council, an alliance of spacefaring civilizations. Dr. Sophie Archer, a brilliant xenobiologist and Earth's foremost expert on alien life, was chosen to be humanity's representative on the council. It was a daunting responsibility, but Sophie was determined to make her mark and ensure humanity's voice was heard among the stars. As she prepared for her mission, Sophie's thoughts turned to her daughter, Ava. At just 8 years old, Ava was a bright and curious child, always eager to learn about the wonders of the universe. Sophie hated the thought of leaving her behind, but she knew this opportunity was too important to pass up. With a heavy heart, she entrusted Ava's care to her sister, promising to return as soon as she could. Upon arriving at the council's headquarters, a massive space station orbiting a distant star, Sophie was immediately struck by the diversity of alien species present. Beings of all shapes, sizes, and hues moved through the station's halls, some humanoid, others utterly bizarre. It was a stark reminder of how much there was still to learn about the cosmos. However, as Sophie began to interact with her fellow council members, she quickly realized that not all of them viewed humanity in a positive light. Many saw Earth as a primitive backwater, its people ruled by emotion rather than logic. They questioned whether humanity was truly ready to take its place on the galactic stage. Sophie refused to be discouraged by their attitudes. She knew that humanity had much to offer, and she was determined to prove it. In council meetings, she spoke passionately about Earth's rich history and culture, highlighting humanity's capacity for innovation, adaptability, and compassion. Slowly but surely, Sophie began to win over some of her detractors. Her keen intellect and diplomatic skills earned her grudging respect from even the most skeptical council members. For the first time in its history, it seemed the council was starting to see humanity as a valuable addition to the galactic community. However, not everyone was pleased by this development. In the shadows of the council, a faction led by the ruthless Zareen viewed humanity's ascent with growing alarm. They feared that Earth's rapid progress would upset the delicate balance of power that had existed for eons. As Sophie continued her work, unaware of the gathering storm, Zareen and his followers hatched a sinister plot to bring humanity to heel. They would strike at Sophie's heart, using her love for her daughter as a weapon against her. Back on Earth, Ava was settling into life without her mother. Though she missed Sophie dearly, she found comfort in the love of her aunt and the endless wonders of science. Like her mother, Ava had a voracious appetite for knowledge, devouring every book and vid file she could find on alien worlds and cultures. One day, as Ava walked home from school, a strange figure stepped out of the shadows. Before she could react, the world went black. When she awoke, she found herself in an unfamiliar room, surrounded by alien faces. Her confused cries were met with cold silence. Ava didn't know it yet, but she had just become a pawn in a game of galactic intrigue, her fate tied to the future of humanity itself. As fear gripped her heart, she clung to the belief that her mother would come for her. No matter what it took, Sophie would find a way to bring her home. An unprecedented betrayal. News of Ava's abduction sent shockwaves through the council. For Sophie, it was a nightmare made real. The thought of her daughter in the hands of unknown captors filled her with a terror she had never known. But beneath the fear, a cold rage began to take hold. Sophie knew that this was no random kidnapping. The timing was too perfect, the target too specific. Someone within the council itself had orchestrated this attack, seeking to use Ava as leverage against her, and by extension, all of humanity. Her suspicions quickly fell on Zareen, the leader of the faction that had opposed humanity's inclusion from the start. Zareen had made no secret of his disdain for what he saw as humanity's reckless ambition and lack of respect for galactic norms. Could he be behind Ava's abduction? Sophie knew she couldn't afford to make baseless accusations, especially against a figure as powerful as Zareen. She needed proof, and to get it, she would have to be cautious and strategic in her approach. Reaching out to those council members she had come to trust, Sophie began to quietly investigate Zareen and his allies. She pored over financial records, communication logs, and security footage, searching for any hint of their involvement in Ava's kidnapping. As she dug deeper, a disturbing picture began to emerge. Zareen's faction had been secretly funneling resources and personnel to a remote, uncharted system on the edge of council space. The scale of the operation suggested something far more sinister than a mere political disagreement. Sophie's allies, alarmed by her findings, pledged their support. They, too, had grown wary of Zareen's increasing influence and the shadow it cast over the council's proceedings. Together, they began to gather evidence, building a case to present before the full council. Meanwhile, in her undisclosed prison, Ava struggled to make sense of her situation. Her captors, a mix of various alien species, seemed to have little interest in her beyond keeping her confined and compliant. They spoke in hushed tones, their words unintelligible to her universal translator. Despite her fear, Ava refused to give in to despair. She was her mother's daughter, after all, and that meant she had a mind as sharp as any blade. She began to study her surroundings, memorizing the routines of her guards and the layout of her cell. If an opportunity for escape presented itself, she would be ready. Back on the council station, Sophie's investigation was beginning to bear fruit. A pattern emerged from the chaos of data, painting a chilling picture of Zareen's true intentions. It seemed he and his followers believed that humanity's rapid advancement posed an existential threat to the established order of the galaxy. They feared that Earth, with its innovative spirit and expansionist drive, would soon eclipse the older, more stagnant civilizations that had long dominated the Council. To prevent this, they had resolved to take drastic action, starting with the neutralization of Earth's most vocal advocate, Sophie herself. The final piece of the puzzle fell into place when Sophie uncovered an encrypted communication between Zareen and an unknown associate. In it, they discussed the Archer situation and the need to break humanity's spirit before it could grow too bold. With a heavy heart, Sophie realized the terrible truth. Her daughter's abduction had not been a mere political ploy, but rather the opening salvo in a campaign of terror designed to cow humanity into submission. Zareen and his ilk would stop at nothing to maintain their grip on power, even if it meant sacrificing an innocent child. As rage and grief warred within her, Sophie steeled herself for the confrontation to come. She would expose Zareen's treachery before the Council and the galaxy at large, and she would not rest until Ava was safe in her arms once more, no matter the cost. For Sophie knew that this was no longer just about her or her daughter. The fate of humanity itself hung in the balance, and she would not let it fall. A mother's wrath unleashed, Sophie stood before the assembled council, her posture regal and her eyes alight with righteous fury. In her hand, she held a data crystal containing the evidence of Zareen's crimes, the culmination of weeks of tireless investigation and dangerous espionage. Esteemed members of the council, she began, her voice ringing clear and true through the cavernous chamber. I come before you today, not just as a representative of Earth, but as a mother whose child has been stolen from her. A murmur rippled through the gathered aliens, a mix of surprise, confusion, and, in some cases, guilty unease. Zareen himself sat stone-faced, his eyes fixed on Sophie with an unreadable expression. I have uncovered evidence that implicates one of our own in this heinous act, Sophie continued, her gaze sweeping the room before settling on Zareen. Counselor Zareen, I accuse you of orchestrating the abduction of my daughter, Ava Archer, as part of a wider conspiracy against humanity. The chamber erupted into chaos as Zareen leaped to his feet, his face contorted with rage. How dare you? He bellowed, his voice booming over the clamor. This is an outrage, a baseless slander against my character and my people. Sophie stood firm in the face of his fury, her own anger burning cold and bright. I have proof, she said simply, holding up the data crystal. Records of your secret communications, your clandestine operations, your plans to subjugate Earth and break humanity's spirit. She turned to the council, her expression imploring. I ask that you review this evidence with an open mind and a commitment to justice. If Zareen is innocent, he has nothing to fear from the truth. As the council members began to pore over the data, Zareen's facade of righteous indignation began to crumble. Whispers turned to shouts of outrage and condemnation as the scope of his treachery became clear. Sophie watched with grim satisfaction as Zareen's allies began to distance themselves, unwilling to be dragged down with him. One by one, they stepped forward to corroborate her findings, offering their own tales of Zareen's scheming and manipulation. In the end, the council's decision was unanimous. Zareen was stripped of his position and placed under arrest, his crimes laid bare for all to see. Sophie felt a rush of vindication, but it was tempered by the knowledge that her daughter was still out there, waiting to be saved. The council, recognizing the severity of the situation, authorized an immediate rescue mission. A joint task force of human and alien operatives was assembled, each handpicked for their skills and loyalty. Sophie, driven by a mother's unwavering resolve, insisted on leading the mission herself. As the strike team prepared for the assault on Zareen's stronghold, Sophie reached out to her daughter through a secure channel. "Hold on, my brave girl," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "Mommy's coming for you." Light years away in the depths of Zareen's fortress, Ava huddled in her cell, her spirit battered but unbroken. Suddenly, the ground shook with the force of distant explosions, and the sound of gunfire and shouting filled the air. Ava's heart leaped with a wild, desperate hope. She knew, with the unshakable certainty of a child's faith, that her mother had come for her at last. As the door to her cell burst open, revealing Sophie's tear-streaked face, Ava ran into her arms, sobbing with relief and joy. But their reunion was short-lived. Zareen, driven by desperation and a thirst for vengeance, had one final card to play. Even as his stronghold crumbled around him, he enacted a fail-safe plan, the release of a devastating bioweapon designed to ravage entire worlds. As alarms blared and chaos reigned, Sophie knew she faced an impossible choice. She could flee with Ava, leaving countless billions to their fate, or she could risk everything to stop Zareen's madness at its source. In the end, there was no choice at all, for Sophie knew that to truly save her daughter, to give her a future worth living, she had to be willing to fight for it. With a final kiss to Ava's forehead, she entrusted her to the care of her allies and set off to confront Zareen one last time. The fate of worlds hung in the balance as Sophie raced against time, her love for her daughter and her unwavering belief in the strength of the human spirit guiding her every step. No matter the odds, no matter the cost, she would not fail. She could not. For she was a mother, and there was no force in the galaxy more powerful than that. Fury and flames. The corridors of Zareen's stronghold echoed with the sounds of battle as Sophie fought her way towards the heart of the complex. Alien warriors, once loyal to Zareen, now threw themselves at her with reckless abandon, determined to stop her at any cost. But Sophie was a force of nature, unstoppable in her determination to save her daughter and prevent the unleashing of Zareen's bioweapon. With each opponent she faced, she felt a new surge of strength, born of the love and fury that burned within her. As she finally reached the central chamber, she found herself face to face with Zareen himself. The once proud counselor was a shadow of his former self, his eyes wild with desperation and hate. "You've ruined everything," he screamed, his voice raw with rage. "Humanity was never meant to join us among the stars. You've upset the balance, threatened the very fabric of our society." Sophie stood tall, her gaze unwavering. "No, Zareen, it is you who threatens the balance. Your fear and prejudice have blinded you to the truth, that diversity is our strength, that progress comes from embracing change, not fighting it." Zareen's lips twisted into a sneer. "Progress? You call this progress? unleashing chaos and upheaval across the galaxy. No, I will save us from your folly, even if it means burning 1,000 worlds. With a final manic laugh, he turned to activate the bioweapon, his hand hovering over the release mechanism. Sophie leaped forward, grappling with him in a desperate bid to stop the unthinkable. As they struggled, Sophie's mind raced, searching for a way to end this without further bloodshed. Suddenly, inspiration struck. Activating her comlink, she broadcast her voice across the stronghold systems, reaching out to Zareen's followers. "Listen to me," she cried, her voice filled with passion and conviction. "Zareen has lied to you, manipulated you, turned you against the very ideals you swore to uphold. He would sacrifice countless innocent lives, all in the name of his own fear and hatred." She took a deep breath, pouring every ounce of her belief into her words. "But it's not too late. You can still choose a different path, one of unity and understanding. Stand with me, with humanity, and together we can build a future brighter than any of us have ever dreamed." For a long, tense moment, there was silence. Then, one by one, Zareen's warriors began to lay down their arms, their faces filled with a new resolve. They had heard the truth in Sophie's words, and they would not be party to Zareen's madness any longer. Zareen, seeing his support crumble around him, let out a howl of rage and despair. In a final, desperate gambit, he lunged for the bioweapon controls, determined to see his plan through to the bitter end. But Sophie was faster. With a swift, decisive blow, she knocked Zareen unconscious, his body slumping to the floor in a heap. The threat was over. The galaxy was safe. As the last of Zareen's forces surrendered, Sophie raced to find Ava. When she saw her daughter, safe and sound in the care of her allies, she fell to her knees, overwhelmed with relief and gratitude. They clung to each other, tears streaming down their faces, as around them, the stronghold bustled with activity, the process of securing the site and tending to the wounded already underway. In the aftermath of the battle, as Zareen was taken into custody to face justice for his crimes, Sophie knew that the road ahead would not be easy. Trust had been broken, old wounds reopened, and the scars of this ordeal would take time to heal. But she also knew that they had taken the first crucial step towards a new era of cooperation and understanding between humanity and the galactic community. Through her actions, Sophie had shown the Council the true strength of the human spirit, not the strength of violence and domination, but the strength of compassion, resilience, and unwavering love. As she held Ava close, Sophie felt a renewed sense of hope and purpose. Together, they would return to Earth as heroes, living symbols of the bond between mother and child, between humanity and the stars. And together, they would face whatever challenges the future might bring, knowing that no force in the universe could ever truly tear them apart. For they were family, and that was a power greater than any other. Forging a new future. The return of Sophie and Ava Archer to Earth was met with a hero's welcome. Crowds lined the streets, cheering and waving flags as the mother-daughter duo made their way to a hastily arranged press conference. The world had watched in awe as the story of Sophie's daring rescue mission spread, marveling at the strength and determination of a single mother who had taken on the galaxy to save her child. As Sophie stepped up to the podium, the weight of her experiences hung heavy on her shoulders. But there was a new lightness in her heart, a sense of hope and possibility that had been forged in the crucible of her trials. "My fellow humans," here is the continuation and conclusion of the story. "My fellow humans," she began, her voice strong and clear. "We stand today on the threshold of a new age, an age in which humanity takes its rightful place among the stars, not as a subordinate or a rival, but as an equal partner in the great cosmic dance." She paused, her eyes sweeping the crowd, taking in the faces of those who had supported her, believed in her, even in her darkest moments. "The road that has brought us to this point has not been an easy one. We have faced challenges and adversities that would have broken a lesser species. But we are not a lesser species. We are human, And our greatest strength lies not in our technology or our physical prowess, but in the unbreakable bonds of love and loyalty that tie us together. Sophie's gaze fell on Ava, standing proud and tall beside her. My daughter is living proof of this. When she was taken from me, when I faced the very real possibility of losing her forever, it was the love I bore her that gave me the strength to fight on. And it was the love and support of my fellow humans, of the brave men and women who stood with me against the darkness, that saw us through to victory. A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd, a palpable sense of unity and shared purpose. Sophie let it wash over her, drawing strength from the collective will of her people. But our work is not yet done, she continued, her tone growing more solemn. The galaxy is a vast and wondrous place, filled with challenges and opportunities in equal measure. If we are to thrive in this new era, we must be willing to learn from our mistakes, to grow and adapt as a species. She took a deep breath, her next words heavy with import. That is why I have accepted the Council's invitation to serve as Earth's permanent representative. In this role, I will work tirelessly to foster greater understanding and cooperation between humanity and our galactic neighbors. We have so much to learn from each other, so much to gain from open and honest dialogue. The crowd erupted into applause, the sound washing over Sophie like a physical force. She raised her hand, waiting for quiet to settle once more. "But I cannot do this alone," she said, her eyes shining with emotion. "I will need your help, your support, your ideas, and your dreams. Together, we will build a future in which our children, and our children's children, can look to the stars not with fear, but with wonder and excitement." She reached out, taking Ava's hand in hers. "My daughter has shown me the true meaning of courage and resilience. She has faced horrors no child should ever have to face, and emerged stronger for it. In her, I see the future of our species, a future of boundless potential and unquenchable spirit." As Sophie's speech drew to a close, the sense of possibility in the air was almost tangible. The crowd surged forward, eager to congratulate her, to share in this moment of triumph and new beginnings. In the days and weeks that followed, Sophie threw herself into her new role with characteristic passion and determination. She worked to establish new lines of communication between Earth and the Council, advocating for policies of mutual respect and cooperation. Under her guidance, humanity began to take its first tentative steps into the wider galactic community. Scientists and scholars from Earth traveled to distant worlds, exchanging knowledge and ideas with their alien counterparts. Human artists and musicians found new audiences among the stars, their works transcending the barriers of language and culture. And through it all, Sophie and Ava remained the shining heart of this new era. Their bond, forged in the fire of adversity, became a symbol of hope and unity for all who looked to the stars. Years passed, and as Ava grew into a strong and brilliant young woman, Sophie knew that her greatest legacy would not be the treaties signed or the accords negotiated, but the love and wisdom she had passed on to her daughter. For in Ava, and in the countless other children who would grow up in this brave new universe, Sophie saw the promise of a future brighter than any she had dared to imagine. A future in which the human spirit, undaunted and indomitable, would reach ever higher, ever farther, into the vast and endless expanse of the cosmos. And she knew, with a certainty that surpassed all doubt, that no matter what challenges lay ahead, no matter what darkness threatened to engulf them, the light of human love and courage would always shine through, a beacon of hope and resilience in an ever-changing galaxy.